Welcome to Barron Public Library's Friday Read Aloud. Every superhero has an origin story, and there are origin stories for some of the most influential changemakers in the world that start with a book. Maybe this book will be a part of your origin story. With Great Power, The Marvelous Stan Lee, by Annie Hunter Eriksen, illustrated by Lee Gatlin. Stan Lee didn't have hulking strength, or fantastic flexibility, or cat-like reflexes. His superpower was creating heroes who did. But back when he was Stanley Lieber, a kid growing up in New York City, he didn't feel super. Stanley's family could barely afford groceries. In their tiny apartment in the Bronx, the only window had a perfect view of a brick wall. So Stanley discovered a better window to see the world. Stories. No matter how ant-sized his home felt, the world in his stories was ginormous. Stanley shivered at the monstrousness of Frankenstein and whizzed through Shakespeare's tales of mischievous tricksters and dangerous magic. When he had zoomed through all of those stories, Stanley invented his own. He decided he was going to be the next great American writer. But Stanley's father, mother, and kid brother, Larry, were counting on him to help make ends meet. So, at 16 and a half, he set out in search for a job. Neighbors never loaf around. Luckily, a magazine called Timely Comics was hiring. With this gig, Stanley could get his foot in the door in the world of writing. But for now, he would be Stanley Lieber, errand boy. Cha-da-ching! Ka-clink! Went the pens as errand boy filled them in the inkwells. What woo! Rang the pencils as errand boy raced lines for artist. Thwack! Errand boy slung notes on writer's desk. Boom! Errand boy rushed by to deliver everyone's lunch. When Timely Comics was in dire need of someone, anyone, to write a filler story for Captain America, who was around to save the day, none other than Errand Boy! With a stroke of a pen, Stanley went from a sandwich-fetching sidekick to published writer. But superheroes were a dime a dozen, and sometimes mocked as long underwear characters. Who'd want to put their name on something like that? So he signed his first story as Stan Lee. No one would ever suspect that Stanley Lieber, the next great American writer, once wrote comic books. It was the perfect disguise. Kabam! Ha! That's more like it! Time for some real action, Bucky boy! Gee whiz, Cap, you said it! Pages meant payday, so Stan scribbled stories in a flurry. He had a long way to go to be as fast as veteran creators Joe Simon and Jack the King Kirby, who cranked out issues at breakneck speed. Everything changed when the famed comic book duo quit. Stan was suddenly alone in a quiet office. No hearty laughs from Joe, no humming from Jack. Timely Comics needed an editor, and once again, Stan answered the call. Visitors to Timely Comics were aghast when they asked for the editor, Mr. Lee, and out stepped a teenager? Stan was living the dream. But comics were driven by sales, not story, and Stan found himself churning out the same plots over and over and over again for each new trend. A flawless chiseled hero predictably saves the day in a cowboy hat, in army fatigues, or in a cape. 2 decades, just like this, paraded on by. Timely Comics became Atlas Comics. Atlas Comics became Marvel Comics. Stan was one more humdrum comic book story away from losing his mind. He huffed home to his beloved wife, Joni. He was actually going to quit, but Joni had different advice. Why not finally sneak in a story he always wanted to tell? Quit or be fired, There's nothing to lose. So Stan, teaming up with Jack Kirby, pushed up his sleeves and made a character whose body and long-winded dialogue stretched for miles. Mr. Fantastic. He set the page ablaze with a real hothead. Human Torch. He created a character who had to fight to be more than a vanishing act. The Invisible Girl. Then he made a character as stubborn as a rock. The Thing. With Jack's artwork inking it all to life, it was something to be proud of. The flawed but fantastic Four. It was a different recipe than the usual perfect superhero formula. A pinch of superpowers and a heaping of humanity, mixed for an explosion of chemistry. Readers ate it up. But what could Stan give them next? He mused on his days as a kid growing up in New York City. Gee, unlike the muscle-bound heroes of the past, a hero could be anybody. Even a lonely, gawky kid in the Bronx who didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. Science whiz, certified geek, orphan, tall, lanky, a professional wallflower who didn't know a cha-cha from a waltz? This hero would feel lonely and shunned, but strive to protect even those who had bullied him. Stan furiously drafted while artist sturdy Steve Ditko drew the perfect design, until a new face peered back at them. Peter Parker, the amazing Spider-Man! Sounds like a comedy character, not a hero. People hate spiders. Spiders are spooky. A teenager is a sidekick. Spider-Man sounds like a disaster. Stan's publishers at Marvel Comics were flummoxed. What kind of hero was that? But readers adored Spider-Man. When it was down to the final chapter, Spider-Man's biggest fight wasn't with Doc Ock. It was with himself. And that battle for self-confidence put Spidey, Stan, and millions of fans on the same page. As his outcast character slingshot his way to the top with a best-selling, record-smashing issue, Stan felt like his excitement could catapult him to the top of New York's tallest building, too. On second thought, better leave the web-slinging to Spidey. Stan's publisher slapped him on the back in a hearty congratulations. Remember that Spider-Man idea we all like so much? Why don't we turn it into a series? What other superheroes do you have up your sleeves? With so many ideas for perfectly imperfect heroes, he was gonna need bigger sleeves. Stan dusted off the books from his childhood, the ones that transformed his family's brick-facing window into thousands of imaginative worlds. He penned misunderstood monsters, like in Frankenstein, but with his own flair, bestowing his creations with a hero's heart of gold or a silver surfboard. He reimagined the Norse gods, clad in capes wielding hammers and exchanging words reminiscent of the bard's famous plays. Next, he invented a doctor turned master of the mystic arts who cast curious spells. Then a genius billionaire who thought he had it all until an iron suit showed him how to be a hero. Call him the Human Torch because Stan was on fire. The Marvel Universe was exploding at the seams with Stan's superheroes. Soon it was packing up its nicest iron suits because it was headed to Hollywood. And so was Stan. As the red carpet beckoned, Stan knew that with great power there must also come great responsibility. Stan set aside the magic hammer and created something new, a column to talk directly with his readers. With Stan's soapbox in every monthly Marvel comic, he worked to answer the question, what makes a hero? You don't need a pair of web shooters or impenetrable skin to stand up for your fellow man. Anyone can be a hero, as long as they stand for what's right. Nuff said. Thank you for listening to this marvelous tale about Stan Lee. Has it inspired you? What do you think makes a superhero? Until next time, this is Miss Amanda. Be sure to enjoy the magic of books and keep reading.